All right, Mr. Tembo, let's begin firstly from your party and speak on how much it has grown from the 2021 general elections. On this very day, Zambia did go to the polls, and much later on, the final results were announced. But let's begin from your end as a president of the PEP. How would you describe the growth of the Patriots for Economic Progress a year later after the 2021 general elections?
I think for us, we are very happy with the strides that we have made so far in the past 12 months or so, particularly in the area of party mobilization. You must remember that for us, we are starting our mobilization from scratch, which means that we had to convince the first person that we made to say, can you please join the Patriots for Economic Progress? And of course, such an approach is always more burdensome than if you inherit an already existing party with the members of parliament, councillors, and everything in place. So our journey has been tough, but we are succeeding. And so far, a few days ago, we managed to launch an application. It's both a web-based as well as a phone app, which potential members can download and register. And that allows us to have a central registry of all our members across the country. And I'm very happy to mention that in the past 2 days since the launch of that app, we've managed to register in excess of 5,900 members as at this morning. So we believe that that particular initiative will allow the party to better mobilize going forward.
Now, Mr. Tembo, you've been quite critical of the government at the moment with the decisions that have been made in the last couple of months since the Republican president, anyway, was inaugurated. Now, when you look at what people did on this day, over 2.8 million people voted for the current Republican president. And where things stand at the moment, do you think that we still have that form of enthusiasm, that form of vigor from the people who went out to vote last year with what has been happening in the last couple of months?
Well, from our standpoint, the new Dawn administration has obviously made a number of mistakes since getting into office. And for us, I wouldn't really want to call it criticism. I would want to call it advice, because what we essentially do is that we advise the new Dawn administration on various issues. Some of those mistakes include the decision to try and seek an IMF bailout loan at a time that this country is heavily indebted. You know, when you are heavily indebted, the first step you make to try and reduce that debt burden is to begin to pay back the debt. You don't reduce the debt burden by accumulating more debt. And we have advised the new Dawn administration to that effect. Additionally, I believe that one of the other important mistakes that they made was the decision to give a de facto tax holiday to the mines, which amounted to an excess of $2.5 billion. At a time that this country, dearly needs that money. You must remember that the issue of high copper prices only happens once in a lifetime. And when it happens, we as a country need to reap as much as possible so that we can resolve the many economic challenges that this country faces. This particular year, copper was as high as $13,000 per metric ton, which was unprecedented, but we did not benefit anything because of that de facto tax holiday. So for us, we believe that the new Dawn administration has made a number of mistakes, but as to whether this has dampened the mood of the 2.8 million people that voted for President Hakainde Hichilema and his party, from our standpoint, we believe that is not the case yet. We believe that the majority of that 2.8 million are still enthusiastic and they are still optimistic that the new Dawn administration will deliver on its mandate. I think the disappointment will only begin to creep in maybe in year 2 or year 3 when it becomes very evident to the majority of the citizens that perhaps they had misplaced their vote. So essentially, that is our point of view.
You've highlighted some of the mistakes by the current government. What would you say are some of the achievements that even you as an opposition leader could say is quite commendable, they should carry on with for the rest of their tenure?
Well, I think one of the achievements which I can really point at as something that they might have done well is perhaps the reduction in cadarism. I'm calling it reduction because cadarism is still out there. I'm sure you heard testimonies from bus drivers um, during that disagreement that the bus and taxi owners had with RATSA. The bus drivers testified that they are still being harassed and that UPND cadres still collect money from bus stations. Even, the vendors along Lumumba Road testified to that effect. My point is that we cannot ignore the fact that in as much as there are still pockets of cadarism here and there, it has significantly been reduced compared to what it was during the previous regime. And I want to mention, Chimweka, that when you look at the economic parameters of our country at the moment, where you have very high youth unemployment, there are literally millions and millions of youth, both those who are educated as well as those who are not, who are roaming the streets. And those youth, they essentially need to eat on a daily basis. The fact that the UPND administration has managed to reduce cadarism should be looked at in that light, because obviously they faced a lot of resistance from these unemployed youth who saw cadarism as a way of basically putting a meal on the table. And they saw cadarism as a reason, to some extent, that they wanted to support UPND, so that when UPND is ushered into office, they can have an opportunity to start making money the way their colleagues in the previous regime used to make money. I think that was a bigger motivation among most of the youth. So for them to be told that, no, we in the New Dawn are not going to allow cadarism, I'm sure they took that with a pinch of salt. So I think I would like to recommend President Hakainde Hichilema on that regard for being able to, resist the pressure to allow cadarism and continuing to resist it.
You have made a lot of controversial remarks and commentary from when the UPND formed government, and many feel that this could just be taken as personal. They believe that you're taking this way too personal. And even when you take a look at what you do post on your own social media platforms, we haven't really seen you commend the UPND government in terms of what they have achieved, but instead we get to see you rather making controversial remarks on some of the decisions that they make. What is your comment on this?
Well, Justin, you must understand that issues of national development are personal issues. So if you don't take the development of Zambia as a personal issue, then you've got no business aspiring as a Republican president of this country. For us, we are very passionate about the policy decisions that are made by government at any given point in time, whether it is the current New Dawn administration or indeed the previous regime. We were always very passionate in the previous regime. I'm sure you remember us protesting against corruption, walking in Cairo Road with wheelbarrows to protest against the fire tenders. Our passion on issues of national development, on issues of fighting corruption, cannot be questioned. It has always been constant, and that is on record.
Perhaps maybe what could be seen is that it gets personal. Yes, it can be understandable if it's personal on the issues, but what is believed to be happening is that it gets personal with individuals or characters. In this case, one character. Yes, it might not be a name being mentioned, but when one takes a look at your Facebook page, Mr. Tembo, you make references to people like Uyundani, which many would believe is reference to the Republican president, and something personal could be said. Just recently we saw a post about, a bag of meal being locked and all of that within a home. Yes, there's no name mentioned, but many believe that this is reference to Republican president, and that's what others feel is personal. What would your comment be when people believe such things are being made towards the Republican president?
Well, Chimweka, you must understand that the moment you become Republican president, then there is no longer Sean Tembo, the individual. There is only Sean Tembo, the president. President Hakainde Hichilema is the head of state. And when you look at our, governance setup at the moment, you realize that the buck stops with the head of state. He's the alpha and omega of government policy. He is the alpha and omega of government procedures and processes. So when the police do something wrong, instead of us wasting our time talking about the Inspector General of Police, who is a mere appointee of the president, we would rather talk about the president who appointed the individual who is leading the police. So that if the president is not happy with the conduct and performance of the IG, he can basically fire him. When we are not happy with the issues in the judiciary, if we are not happy about Mumbipiri being detained for a prolonged period of time, we are not going to waste our time talking about the Chief Justice or talking about anybody in the judiciary. We are going to talk about President Hakainde Hichilema because he's the one who appointed the Chief Justice. So that is our approach. We've got no time, to waste on talking about trifles, on talking about individuals who are mere appointees. The only time we have is to talk about the person who appoints these individuals that form part of government. And that person is the Republican president. So that is essentially our approach. The fact that we talk about President Hakainde Hichilema with a lot of frequency might appear as though we have a personal vendetta against the president, but that is very far from the truth. We are very committed to ensuring that this government performs because we are very, very aware of the fact that if the UPND administration fails to perform, it is Zambia which would have failed. And so we would derive no joy in seeing Zambia fail to perform. And that is that is the very reason why we make it our business to advise. And we want, I want my brother, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, if he's watching this program, to understand that our advice is not ill-intended. Our advice is meant to make him perform better. Our advice is meant for him to leave a better legacy for this country.
All right, as we conclude, Mr. Tembo, let's reflect on this day. 1 year ago, where exactly was Mr. Sean Tembo? What was he thinking as Zambians went out to vote? The events of this day, eventually internet being interrupted. What was running through your mind as Zambians went to the polls on this day last year?
Well, as Zambia went to the polls last year, of course, this time I was queuing at Robert Dean Primary School, which is just about 500 meters from my home. I was queuing to cast my vote together with my wife. In terms of what was going through my mind, when I reached the polling station, I first observed the turnout, the voter turnout. And when I saw the very high voter turnout, I knew for sure that there was going to be a change of government because people, as a matter of common sense, people cannot wake up at 02 to go and keep a government in office. The only reason that people wake up at 02 is to remove a government from office. So it was very evident. And even the interview, there were a number of journalists there at the polling session. I gave an interview to a number of stations, including Diamond TV. And, I was very confident. I was 99% confident that we were going to have a change of government. Although I was, I didn't expect the UPND to win with the margin that they won. I knew that they would win, but I didn't expect them to win with such a landslide margin where they penetrated, all the perceived PF strongholds in Northern Province, Eastern Province, Lusaka, Copperbelt. I think that one came as a surprise to me. And at the end of the day, Chimweka, I think it's a very good thing that the UPND administration won with a majority mandate. Because when you have a government that does not have a clear mandate in office, a government which wins with a very thin margin, which is something that is likely to happen in Kenya, by the way, when you look at the margins between Ruto and Odinga.